Thanks again for joining us today. We're excited to discuss our new DocuSign integration with NITRO Studio. And before we get started, I have James Restivo with us today, our VP of Product Development. But before I pass things over to him, I wanted to just kind of go through a little bit of housekeeping. We want to make this call as interactive as possible. We're here for you. So if you have any questions, comments, anything, go ahead and use that question box. We don't want to talk at you. It's meant to be a conversation, so don't be shy. And this will be recorded. So if you have any questions, you need to reference this later. It'll be added to our YouTube channel, and we'll also send the recording out to you. And then lastly, we're going to be kind of focusing on just like an overview of the updates today. But if you have questions about your specific application, don't hesitate. Again, ask that in the question box. We're here for you. Now, James, let's go ahead and dig into it. Can you tell us a little bit about our new DocuSign integration?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. And Chris, I think you forgot to introduce yourself. It's Chris Away from our marketing team here at Crook Canyon. So Chris, I appreciate the introduction. Recently we went through and released this DocuSign integration. It's one of our part of our e-signature toolkit that we're working on in NITRO Studio. So we're going to be working on more. More is going to be coming down the line, but DocuSign is sort of our first foray into this e-signature, digital signature kind of realm, where you can actually get to leverage your DocuSign integration and merge it with the NITRO functionality. So DocuSign is obviously used extensively in the world, so we felt that was a good one to start with. Certainly if you have other e-signature tools that you prefer, maybe Adobe e-signature or something like that, go ahead and pop that in, and we'll definitely consider those for future API integration development for sure. So certainly feel free, if you're not using DocuSign today and you have something else that you're leveraging, go ahead and pop that in. Another thing I wanted to kind of preface before we really get into this is that we've released this for Office 365 customers at this point, and we are working on a different model for e-signatures for on-premises, since we have a little more, we can do with digital certificates on-premises and different things we can do over there. So there are some things coming for the on-premises world. So if you are on-premises today, don't feel like you're being left out. We are working on something for you guys to leverage this. DocuSign integration directly is right now only for Office 365 though. So I just want to preface that to start with this particular iteration of what we're doing. It's for 365. So that being said, I'll get right into it and just sort of talk about some of the reasons you might want to use DocuSign or use the e-signature field. I'm sure you probably know there's a number of situations you probably encounter daily, hourly, maybe all the time, where you need to go and get a signature from someone. You need to get an approval for XYZ, maybe for a purchase, which we're going to run through our purchasing program for this today, just to show you what this looks like. Maybe it's for a hardware request, maybe it's for a PTO request, and you get a signature on a piece of paper, and maybe the approval that you get through the standard NITRO and or SharePoint options and or other types of tools aren't quite cutting it. You actually need a physical, almost not quite wet signature, I guess you could say, but a signature that is going to be tied back to the person who signed it. You do get a little bit of that with our e-signature tool in NITRO Forms, but this takes it a step further, where you can, now you have the certificate from DocuSign that says, yes, I see that this person logged in and they signed it. And I'll walk through a little bit of that. So that being said, I'm going to kind of walk through the process that we have set up here before we get into the actual workflow. You can see I've set up a very simple workflow. This is all you really need to do to make it work. It's not that much to it, create a document and send it through DocuSign. But I'll kind of back up for a moment and start where we are with the purchase request. So as you may know, we sell a purchase order tool that starts out with a purchase request that comes through. Now, maybe it's for new cell phones or new laptops or something of that nature. You need to get a signature on that for approval, or you need a signature on the purchase order that gets created from it. So I've already gone through the process of creating the purchase order, or creating the from the purchase request, And now I'm at the point where I want to go send this over to someone to get a signature. Now, who do I send it to? That's all dynamic. You can send it to obviously an email on the you can define, but that can be dynamic based on your fields in the form that you have set up. So what I've done is created the workflow to send it through DocuSign. And right now the DocuSign action is in workflows, but I've also created a custom action which invokes that workflow. So I'll show you the back end of those after I go through kind of what the functionality looks like. And you can see here I've created this custom action to send that PO through DocuSign. And all that's doing is invoking that workflow. And it does take a minute, so I'm gonna go ahead and fire it off. But what happens is it pulls up your custom action screen. It's going to spin for a little bit. I was doing this earlier. It does take some time, likely because of the connection over to DocuSign needing to occur. So we do have that API. I'll show you where that is as we go through this as well. So we sent it through DocuSign. I have my email up, so I have it sent to my email over here. So once this goes through, you'll see a little ding message and maybe a little red dot over here on the mailbox, and it should come through shortly. 3, 2, 1. Oh, maybe taking a minute, but it'll pop up over here. There it is. PO submitted for signature. So now I've got this from DocuSign. So what's happened is now NITRO has gone and invoked DocuSign API, created the envelope and created the document over in DocuSign, and now it's sent to the person for signature. So they get this, which is a kind of typical thing that they get from DocuSign, and then they go and review the document. And this should be pretty standard. We agree. We got to put a signature on it. So we're going to take our signature field, sign it. I'm under James R. I'm going to adopt and sign. I'm going to finish. And then we're going to say no thanks because I have an account with a different setup. And that's it. So easy to sign, get a notification that was completed. And that's it. From the person who needs to sign it perspective, it's really that simple. They get the email, they sign it, it gets sent back. Now what happens is that as part of the process, we're creating a document. And you see here's the documents that we just created. A few seconds ago, we created this one. There's another one I did earlier. Let me refresh this because okay. So it's come in here, and this is the document that gets sent in, and the signature one will come in probably shortly. But let me show you the setup of how we got to this point of being able to do that. So there's this part, but actually let me take it back another step and go to where we can configure the connection with DocuSign. So in, it's going to be over here in site settings. And all right, why did it come up? All right, site information, there we go. Okay, site settings. And you're going to find it under NITRO site settings. And you'll see we have this new iteration in .76 and above that's going to show DocuSign API connection settings. So it has our user ID in it. I'm not going to expose it because it does, anyone could use it, and this video is going to be out on the web. So I'm not going to open that up, but it's just a real simple intake form. And what I'll do actually, because I created the release notes for this and walk through this process, I'm going to increase this a little bit because it's probably pretty small on your screens. But you see here, this is what that API connection settings looks like, right? So you could have a developer account. We did with DocuSign to develop this, but most people usually have a production account. And then we need to grant that permission and put that user ID in there. So we first need to grant that permission for the DocuSign API. And then we put our user ID, which you get from DocuSign. And I'll show you where that is in these other screenshots. Again, because we have a live system, I'm not going to show you the actual numbers. But if you go to sign into DocuSign, whoever on your side has access to it, you go to settings. You should see that when you log in. There is this apps and keys. It's a little small and kind of blurry on the screen. Apologize for that, but you go to apps and keys, which is on the left-hand panel. And then you get the user ID from this box number 3 here. So you should see that user ID in there. There's a copy button right there. So you just hit copy. And then once you copy that, you put it into your NITRO site settings to grant that API. So that's going to allow you to create that connection between your SharePoint site and NITRO and link over to DocuSign. And after that, it's really just a matter of, this is kind of the recommended way we're doing it, is you generate a quote within the workflow and then send it through DocuSign. You can see that's what I've done over here. Yeah, here it is. So create the PO and send it through DocuSign. So creating the generate document action, I think I've gone through this in previous workshops, but just as a refresher, there's a number of different ways that you can create a document. And one way is through a Word template, one way is through an Excel template, and one way is through our item print template with the Croquet Print Manager. So one of those three options will allow you to create a document based on your setup and what your template has in it. And just to show you that real quick, just again, kind of as a refresher, in the Print Manager tool, we have this item print settings where we have the purchase order template. And this gives you rich text control where you can go and configure your template how you need to, and you put in your placeholders from that purchase request. So if there's tax amount, you can pull that in from the purchase request. If there's other information you need to pull in, you can make that part of your document. If it's a Word document template, you could just map your fields into that Word document. So a couple different ways you could do that. And then you save it. Of course, we're going to save it in our documents folder, but if you have a different document library where you want to put it, you can certainly do that. And then we're just going to map a couple fields over to create that item in the document library. And we're going to save it as a PDF. We could also save it as a Word doc if we so chose to do that. So you create the document. So that gives you the document that needs to go out for signature. Then we reference that document action in our DocuSign action settings. So this is where you're going to configure that. And actually, just real quick, I'm going to back up just a moment. And on the left-hand side here in the actions, you're going to see those two actions down here, generate document and DocuSign, kind of near the bottom on the left side. So you see those two things, that's where you're going to find it. You can drag and drop it on and then configure it as you need to. So we'll get into the configurations of this. And it's just pretty straightforward. We're going to reference the generate document action. Of course, you could also use an attachment. So if you wanted to attach a file to your SharePoint item and use that in your process instead, you could certainly do so. So if you had a file on your computer, you want to upload it to the item, hit the custom action to fire off this workflow to send it through DocuSign, you could certainly do that as well. So you don't have to use the generate document action. I just find it very easy to do that, where you know this is the document that's getting generated. This is what's actually going to go through that DocuSign process. You have your recipients, so you could have multiple recipients here that if you have multiple people who need to sign it, right? So it might go through one level of James Restivo signing it, and then it goes through another level of Krista White signing it, and then it goes through another level of maybe Jeff Priest signing it. So it could go through those three different levels. You could sign in order, or you could have them sign in any order. It's up to you. It depends on what your process is for doing that. And then in this case, we just have the one person signing it. And then we're going to send the subject in the body. We do have a limitation on the body. It's going to be only up to 1,000 characters, otherwise it'll get truncated. But within that framework, I think you can pretty much cover whatever message you need to send. And you also notice you can use placeholders. So we have these placeholder buttons over here. So you can go ahead and create that subject line dynamically and create that body dynamically. It could be based on the department, based on who's signing it, who's sending it. It could be PO submitted for signature by James Restivo, and that would be dynamic based on the person who the purchase agent, for instance. So you could say purchase agent, which is on here somewhere. There it is, and say submitted by. And then so now that signature line, the subject line is going to say PO submitted for signature, submitted by the purchase agent, whoever that person is. So you can have placeholders there. You can have similarly, you can have placeholders in the body, so you can do all that. And you'll see that this is what the message was that I got was PO submitted for signature. Then it gives you some more information. Like, please review and sign this PO. Thank you. So that's what I have in the configurations. So that's what they see. So that could be whatever you need it to be. And then where do you want to save it? And similarly, you could save that signed document back in the same folder, which is what we're doing here, or you could save it in a different place. So you have an option to save the actual signed document somewhere different than where you have the generated document. So you generate the document, put it in a folder in SharePoint, and then someone signs it, and now it goes into a different folder in SharePoint. So it gives you a way to kind of separate those two things. You can have your unsigned document in one place and your signed document in another. So it gives you some control over where you see that. And you see if we want to overwrite existing file, maybe as more people sign that, it's going to, the next latest iteration is going to overwrite. Maybe you don't want to do that. You can have your uncheck that and just have, if you have multiple people signing it, they're going to, each one's going to create a new record, and you'll see that. That's why you might want to sign in order, because that way you make sure everyone gets to sign it. There's some process log columns and some things that we could track. Now, if you go over to your DocuSign account, you're going to get this information as far as what the signing status, URL, all that information is good. That's going to be in DocuSign, and you could bring that into SharePoint if you wanted to. I didn't set up the columns to accept that information, so that's why it's not configured for me, but you certainly could bring that in. And yeah, so then you can map columns from that DocuSign item. So we could do, just map our fields from that signed document into the basically the metadata of the document that goes into the SharePoint document library. So that's where that column mappings is coming from. And that's kind of the long and short of it. It really is that straightforward of just creating the PO and then sending it through DocuSign. Now, this, like I mentioned earlier, this is going through NITRO Workflows, which, as you know, are looking for an event, like a date or something getting created or something getting modified. It's looking for one of those things to happen. And so the way to invoke that is through custom actions, as you might know. I'll just show you. We have our custom actions tool. And we have this on our purchased orders list sent through DocuSign. And that's going to be an invoke workflow action. So you can see in the list over here, it is right here, this invoke workflow action, drag and drop it on into our custom action. And now, I'll get rid of that actually. Now we can just invoke that workflow. So invoke a crocating workflow, and then it's the send PO through DocuSign. And so importantly, when you're setting up the workflow, if you need to trigger it through a custom action, you would use it as a user or bot triggered. So the user or bot triggered action or invocation of the workflow is how you're going to be able to call it from the custom action. So that's how you can do it on an ad hoc basis. You may have other scenarios where you want to make an update and automatically send it through DocuSign. That's fine too. You just use the when item is modified and set your conditions for when that action would be fired off, and you send it along. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the how it works. How you can run through it. Really cool way to get an e-signature on your documents when you want to. You have that tracking capability of what DocuSign offers, so we're leveraging all of that, and it creates that integration between your tool, your NITRO business process, and your DocuSign account that you already have. So we do have a question about, is this a new module that would have to be purchased and installed by a Crocating engineer? The great part about this is no, it would not. If you have NITRO Studio on Office 365, you can go to your NITRO page, NITRO apps, if you have access to this. Look for your NITRO version. This was released in NITRO version 2.0.76. So if you're at a lower version, you're not going to see this, but if you're at 7.6 or higher, and you can see we're already up to 8.0. We just made a couple text changes, I think. A quick update on that. So if you're at a version beyond 0.76 for your Crocating for your NITRO apps, you're going to see this action and this option in your settings here, right? So if you go to, again, get over this by going to your site settings. Let me just kind of walk through that again real quick, just to make sure everyone sees how we do that. So first of all, you go get your user ID from DocuSign, which you can find in our release notes information. You go get that user ID and copy that, and then you can put it into the API settings. But to get to those settings, you can go to site information or site settings, whatever comes up, and then go to Crow Canyon Nitro site settings. And then if you scroll down on that, you'll see the DocuSign API connection settings. So again, that should appear automatically for you if you upgrade beyond .76 and you're in Office 365. So not a new module, it's part of your subscription, part of your purchase. It's just, you know, obviously you have to have a DocuSign integration, or a DocuSign account, which may, you know, depending on the level you have with DocuSign, may incur some fees over there, which you may already be paying. So it may really ultimately be at no cost to you to add this in. But we think it's a really powerful feature for you, and like I said, we're continuing to develop in the e-signature realm to give you more options in this. And like I said, if you're using something other than DocuSign today, or you have a preference, let us know. Send us an email, put it in the questions box. However you want to send us that information, we certainly will be willing to look at that and address those integrations as they come up. I think another one we're going to be working on is Adobe eSign after this, because I know that's got a lot of similar functionality to DocuSign and should be pretty easy for us to put that in place. So that'll probably be, you know, within the next few months we'll have that as well. And again, just to reiterate for folks who are coming on, there's if you're on premises today, we're going to be working on a e-signature option for on premises as well. It may not be a DocuSign integration per se, but it will be something similar to what you're. It'll be its e-signature, and it'll be e-signature capability. How that looks, I'm not quite sure yet, but there will be something for our on-premises customers. We did get a question about if it's for GCC High. Yes, we will be releasing this for GCC High once we get that update for the .76 for GCC High available. And let me just take a peek real quick and see if we have that available. And just bear with me one moment, because I think we did release a package for GCC High just recently. And for those who are, yes, it looks like we do have it for GCC High. If you haven't received that package, certainly reach out to me directly. I'll make sure you get that, and you can go ahead and upgrade it for GCC High. And just, you know, we're using acronyms here in terminology. Most of you might be aware of it, but GCC High is a U.S. government version of Office 365. It's different from the commercial version, and so we developed Nitro for that environment as well. And the upgrade path is a little different just because it's in a different Azure environment. It's in the customer's Azure environment, not our hosted Azure environment that we're running. So there's a little bit of difference there in how we deploy those updates, and that's why we got that question about GCC High. But just so people are aware of what I'm talking about when I say GCC High, it's government, US government version of Office 365 that runs with Azure Government, not Azure Commercial. And it looks like we've got a couple of votes for the Adobe eSign integration, so that's good to hear. It's the natural extension of this. I've heard Adobe come up a number of times in conversations with customers, so I think it is a natural extension beyond DocuSign to add that in as well. So we certainly will be looking at that and doing that for Adobe. But if you have any questions or want to ask us where we are with the on-prem e-signature piece, let us know. We're still kind of scoping that out and seeing how we can leverage that. But we're certainly, you know, taking e-signature seriously. It's you know, for security purposes, for auditing requirements, it's something that people are going to want and need to see, that there is a digital signature, a digital certificate associated with it that can be used for audit purposes. So that's why we're going down this road of having e-signature. So this is kind of the first step in that journey. And like I said, you have that today. Go and upgrade and you get it right away. And certainly if there's other things you want to see, let us know. So if there are any other questions, certainly pop them into that box now. I think we're pretty much good. We'll give you about 30 minutes back for your hour. But if you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to stay on and answer any that you have.
This is really exciting, James. I think looks like a lot of people are, I'm excited about it. I think it
Good,
looks like a lot of other people are too.
good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of great things, and certainly any other features, just kind of put a plug out there. If there's any other things you want to see from a development perspective, um, to increase integrations or increase your ability to use Nitro, or things you want to see beyond this, or in any other realm, certainly let us know. We're happy to address it. We did get a question about, can we fetch data from the DocuSign document into database? Yes, we can actually. I did show that briefly. I didn't have it configured in here, but within that DocuSign action, you'll notice here at the bottom, there is a way to bring in some information from DocuSign. So we have the process log, we have the signing status, and we have the signed document URL. All three of those can be brought into SharePoint. I just didn't have those columns set up ahead of time to map them into this thing, but you certainly could map that information into, I think, either multi-line text or single line text column on your form, on your item. So we can get that information, bring it in, and have it directly available in SharePoint, so you don't have to go out to DocuSign to get it. So if there's other things you need to see, let us know, and we'll take a look at adding those in. These are the three we started with as far as bringing that information from DocuSign into SharePoint for your consumption. Yeah, any other questions? Happy to stay on for a couple minutes and answer any. I don't think we're all right. Yeah, if you didn't get a chance to ask a question and you need to go and review this webinar will be up on our website. Workshop. It will be up on our website shortly. You can review it. If you that prompts any questions afterwards, certainly send me an email. Let me know. I'll do my best to get it answered. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining me today. I always appreciate it. And thank you, and take care. All right, thanks, Krista.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.